All right, guys, this is a second part to different types of linear equations that you're creating from basic word problems. So, our first word problem says a local cafe sells an 8-ounce coffee for $2.50 and a 12-ounce coffee for $3.50. We're going to write the equation for this relationship in point slope form. So, point slope form, that's important, using X for the size of coffee and Y for the coffee price. So to solve this, I'm going to start by making just a quick table, and I'm going to say X is my size of coffee. So I'm going to write off to the side size so I remember, and Y is the price. So I'm going to put a little money sign so I remember what Y is. Then I'm going to go back to my original sentence. So we have an 8-ounce coffee. So 8-ounce coffee is my size. That's my X, and it costs $2.50. And Y is my cost. So $2.50. Then I have a 12-ounce coffee, again, size. So it's my X. And it costs $3.50. So I'm going to say it costs $3.50. Then to make this equation, we have to find the slope or the change in Y over the change in X of these 2 points. So to do that, I will find my delta Y or my change in Y by figuring out what happened between $2.50 and $3.50. And I know I went up by $1 for my Y. Then I'll find my change in X. So this is my change in X. And if I went from 8 to 12, I went up by 4. So my delta Y over delta X is 1 over 4. So now I have a slope or delta Y over delta X, and I have 2 different points. And I just have to decide which point I'm going to use for this. So I'm actually going to circle the point I'm going to use. I'm going to use the coordinate pair X is 8, Y is 250. So I'm using the point 8, 250 in my equation. So to make a point slope form equation, you will start with Y equals, then you'll put in your slope, and our slope is 1/4, so 1 over 4. Then you will start with a parenthesis. After the parenthesis will always be your X, and then in your parenthesis will be the opposite of the X value of your coordinate pair. So the X value here is positive 8. The opposite of positive 8 is negative 8. So I'm going to put a negative 8 in my parentheses here, and then I'm going to put my Y value in the back as a positive 250. Now, if you go to a different school or you see it differently, sometimes you'll put the 250 instead of adding it on the back, you'll put it on the other side as minus 250 with your Y. But the way we do it at our school is we make sure that the 250 stays on the left side of the equation as the Y value over here. And that just makes it easier when you transfer into absolute value and quadratic in vertex form. It's going to be in the same format. So again, our equation is Y equals our slope, X, the opposite of the X value that you chose, and then the Y value you chose. Now we're going to predict the price of a 16-ounce coffee using your equation. 16 ounces is the size, which is your X value. So I'm simply going to plug in 16 for X right here. So I'll say Y equals 1/4 times 16 minus 8 plus 250. And then I'm just going to use order of operations, which is your PEMDAS. That's parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. I'm going to use that to work out this equation. So I'll say Y equals 1/4. I'm starting with my parentheses. 16 minus 8 is just 8. And then I'm going to do my multiplication next. And my multiplication is 1/4 times 8. And 1/4 of 8 is 2. So I'll say Y equals 2 plus 250. And then I'll just do my addition. 2 plus 250 is 450. So Y equals 450. So the price of a 16-ounce coffee, based on the equation we made, is $4.50. Okay. Next one we have is Amanda is doing van life and is logging her miles traveled and the amount of gas used. After traveling 105 miles, that looks important, 105 miles, she's used 3 gallons of gas. She uses 5 gallons of gas when she travels 175 miles. So it looks like they switched up. So we said 105 and 3, and then 5 and 175. So make sure we're keeping the 105 and 175 as one variable, and then the 3 and the 5 is the other variable. We're going to write an equation that models this situation, and they actually don't tell us what variable is what. So we have to pick. And I am going to pick gallons of gas for my X and miles for my Y. So I used 3 gallons of gas to go 105 miles, and then 5 gallons of gas to go 175 miles. So make sure the 105 and 75 are on the same side and the 3 and 5 are on the same side, okay? I'm going to find my change in Y. So if I go from 105 to 175, that means I added 70, and I'm going to put it on top of my change in X, and this is to get my slope. My change in X from 3 to 5 is a positive 2. So my change in Y over my change in X is 70 over 2. Now I'm looking at that, and that looks like a crazy fraction, but it's just going to be a division problem that you can reduce. So 70 divided by 2 is going to give you 35. Your slope is 35. So to make this equation, we're going to start with y equals. Remember, you always want to start with your slope. Our slope, or our delta y over delta x, is 35. And then I'm going to pick a point. Again, it doesn't matter which one you pick. I'm going to use this one right here. So I'm going to say I'm going to use a parenthesis x and then the opposite of my x value. So my x value in this point is 3. The opposite of positive 3 is negative 3. So the opposite would be negative 3. So it's x minus 3. And then my y value in the back, which is 105. So in the back, I'm going to write plus 105. Next, we're going to use our equation to determine the number of gallons. So gallons is going to be the x. We don't know what the x is. That she would need to travel 350 miles. So this one's a little different. I have to plug in 350 for my y, which is my miles. So I'll say 350 equals 35 times x minus 3 plus 105. So instead of plugging in the value for my x, in this case, since my miles is 350, I'm going to plug in 350 for my y. So now I just need to get x by itself. So to do that, I'm going to subtract 105 on each side. So I'll say minus 105, minus 105. And 350 minus 105 is going to give me 245. So I'll get 245 equals 35 times x minus 3. Now you have a few options. You could either distribute in your 35 and work it out, or since it's just multiplication, we can get rid of the 35 by just dividing both sides by 35. So I'm going to say divided by 35 on both sides. If you distributed, it's not wrong. This is just easier. 245 divided by 35 is 7. And then we just have x minus 3 left. So once that 35 has been removed, we no longer need our x minus 3 in parentheses because we're not multiplying it by anything. It's just x minus 3. Next, to get x by itself, I'm going to need to add 3 on both sides, and I will get 10 equals x. So it looks like she'll need 10 gallons of gas to go 350 miles. All right, let's try the next one. We have a cell phone company and they charge $25 for 50 texts and $37 for 170 texts. Create an equation in point slope form. So we need this in point slope form where x models the number of texts. So let's make this here. We're going to say x is the number of texts. And y represents the amount of money. So y is going to be the money or the cost of the cell phone company. So let's go ahead and plug in our points. It looks like $25 for 50 texts. Then we have $37 for 170 texts. So Our change in y, our delta y, is going to be plus 12, positive 12. From 25 to 37 was plus 12. And then our change in x, our delta x, is going to be plus 120. And we need our slope, which is our delta y over delta x. It's going to be 12 over 120. Now you'll notice those numbers look really similar. They just have an extra 0. That's because you can reduce them. 12 over 120 can be reduced to 1 over 10. So let's make this equation. We'll start with y equals, our slope is 1 over 10. And then you'll do a parenthesis. I'm going to pick the top point again, just because it's simple. And we'll say x minus 50. So the opposite of the x value, and then plus 25. Next, we're going to find the cost if 250 texts were sent. Remember, text is my x value. So I'm going to plug in 250 for my x this time. So we'll say y equals 1/10 times 250 minus 50 plus 25. And we're following order of operations. So I'm going to start with my parentheses and say 250 minus 50 is going to give me 200. Then I'm going to do my multiplication. I'm going to do 1/10 times 200. And 1/10 times 200 is going to give me 20. It's going to be just 20. So it would be 200 divided by 10, which is 20. And then I'm going to add the 25. And we'll say 20 plus 25 equals 45. So the cost to send 250 texts is $45. Emmanuel is tracking his monthly spending on snacks. After 2 months, he spends $180. And after 6 months, he spends $400. Write an equation that models this situation. So I'm going to do my x and y, as always, x and y. And I'm going to pick x is my months, and y is the amount of money Emmanuel has spent on snacks. So after 2 months, he spent $180. And after 6 months, he spent $400. So my change in y from 180 to 400 is 220. So I'm going up by 220. Then my change in x from 2 to 6 is up by 4. So I'm going to say my change in y over my change in x is going to be 220 over 4. And you can reduce that 220 divided by 4 to 55. Now that you have your delta y over delta x, you'll start with y equals. You'll put down your slope or your delta y over delta x, which is 55. And then you can choose any point you want to. I'm going to choose this top one, which is 280. You'll put your parentheses down, do x minus the x value you chose. So instead of positive 2, you'll put minus 2, and then the y value you chose, which is 180. All right. Using this equation, you're supposed to determine the amount of money he has spent on snacks in 8 months. And 8 is our x value. Our x value is going in right here. So we'll say y equals 55 times 8 minus 2 plus 180. And again, following order of operations, starting with the parentheses. So we look at what's inside of the parentheses first. 8 minus 2 is going to give you 6. And then you're going to do multiplication. So you'll do 55 times 6 to get 330. Bring down your 180. And then we'll do 330 plus 180, which will be 510. So at the 8-month mark, Emmanuel has spent $510 on snacks. All right. We are going to do 3 more here. So at noon, Maria is 2 miles from home, and at 2 p.m., she is 8 miles from home. We're going to create an equation in point slope form again, where x is the hours after noon and y is the miles Maria is from home. This one might sound a little bit tricky, but we're going to be really careful to note the units we're using. This is hours after noon. So hours after noon. and this is the miles from home. So miles from home. Our first point says it's noon, right? So let's think about it. How many hours after noon is noon? Well, it's 0 hours after noon because it's noon right now, right? So if it's noon right now, no time has gone by since noon. So it is 0 hours after noon. And she's 2 miles from home. Then at 2 p.m., 2 p.m. is 2 hours after noon. So 2 hours after noon, she's 8 miles from home. So we're going to do the same process now that we have our 2 points. Our change in y is going to be positive 6 over our change in x, which is positive 2. We'll say delta y over delta x equals 6 over 2. And 6 divided by 2 is just 3. So we'll say y equals, keep in mind, we want point slope form, right? So we're going to do 3. And I cannot use the 0.02. The reason I can't is because if I was using the 0.02, I would be in slope intercept form. It'd be 3x plus 2. That's not what we want. We want point slope form. So we actually have to have an x value for it to be in point slope form. Our x value cannot be 0 for it to be in point slope form. So I'm going to use the second point and say x minus 2 plus 8. And that's because I can't put a minus 0 here. That doesn't make any sense. So I have to use the second point in this situation in order to do it in point slope form. All right, last question on this one is how far Maria will be from home at 4 p.m. 4 p.m. is obviously 4 hours after noon, so we're going to plug in 4 for our x value. We'll say y equals 3 times 4 minus 2 plus 8. Starting with parentheses, 4 minus 2 is 2. Then we're going to do our multiplication. 3 times 2 is 6. And 6 plus 8 is going to be 14. She is 14 miles from home after driving for 4 hours. All right. At 6 a.m., the temperature is 40 degrees Fahrenheit. 6 a.m., 40 degrees Fahrenheit. At 9 a.m., it's 55 degrees Fahrenheit. We're going to create an equation, again, in point slope form. X is going to be our hours of the day. Sorry, not the day. Of the day. And Y is the temperature. So X is going to be our time. Y is going to be our temperature. So we'll start at 6 a.m. with 40 degrees. And 9 a.m., it is 55 degrees. Our change in Y is going to be plus 15. And our change in X is going to be plus 30. So our delta Y over delta X is going to be 15 over 3. 15 divided by 3 is just 5. So we'll make our equation. Y equals our slope, or our delta Y over delta X, which is just 5. And then I'm going to pick the point 640. And we're going to say parentheses, X, the opposite of positive 6, is negative 6. And then the 40 just goes on the back. What temperature will it be at 10 a.m.? So we're just going to plug in 10 for our X value, right? Because X value is time, 10 o'clock is obviously time. So we'll say Y equals 5 times 10 minus 6 plus 40. Y equals 5. We're doing the parentheses first. 10 minus 6 is 4 plus 40. 5 times 4 is 20 plus 40. And Y is going to be 60. So an hour after 9 o'clock, when it was 55 degrees, it has raised to 60 degrees Fahrenheit in that 1 hour period from 9 a.m. where it was 55 degrees to 10 a.m. where it was 60 degrees. All right, last one here. We're attending a concert with some friends. If we buy a single ticket, one singular ticket, it costs $50. And if we buy 5 tickets, it costs $250. Let's make this equation. This time, it's going to be a little bit more challenging because we're not using X and Y. And this is meant to challenge you since I think you got the fundamentals. So T is going to represent the number of tickets. And C is going to represent the cost of the concert. Okay? So if we have 1 ticket, it costs $50. And if we have 5 tickets, it costs $250. So our delta Y is plus 200 and our delta x is plus 4. So delta y over delta x is 200 over 4, and 200 over 4 is going to give you 50. Doesn't that make sense? Each ticket is $50, right? You buy one ticket, it's $50. So logically, that makes sense. Now, here's going to be the challenge. Instead of using x and y, so normally we use x and y, we have to use c and t and c, right? So our y is represented by c. So we're going to start with c equals instead of y equals, right? We're still going to put our slope first. Our slope is 50. But instead of x, we're using the letter t. So we're going to say t, and then I'm going to pick just the first point here. Let's use this first point. So it'll be t instead of plus 1, minus 1, because we changed the positive 1 to a negative, and then plus 50. So that's a little tricky. Make sure you're using the c and the t instead of the x and the y. We're going to figure out the total cost for 8 tickets, and we're going to use our equation to find this. We're plugging in 8 for t. So we're going to say our cost equals 50 times 8 tickets minus 1 plus 50. So we'll say cost equals 8 minus 1 is our first step. That's going to be 7 plus 50. Then we'll do 50 times 7, which will get us 350 plus 50. And 350 plus 50 is, of course, 400. So it will cost $400 for 8 concert tickets. All right, that's it for our part 2 word problems. Hopefully that helped you.